to be a member of the
Hello everyone and welcome to a whole new season of Head On. I'd first like to give a shout out to Paul Wynn, our former host. He's gone on to some new adventures and we wish him all the best and thank him for all the hard work that he did to sustain Head On for the last while. I'm your host, Elizabeth Heinz, and I'll be co-hosting with Brian Anderson over the next few months, and you'll be seeing us with many diverse topics and things of interest that pertain to Vancouver Island. And the goal of Head On is to inspire, inform, and engage people on topics that are relevant to everybody here on Vancouver Island. And the topic we're discussing tonight is very relevant. I'm sure many of us have seen over the years this quiet force at every festival, event, parade, any kind of public event. There's the quiet force you'll see there called St. John Ambulance. And I want to talk about Beyond the Band-Aid with St. John Ambulance. You might have been in one of their tents to have a Band-Aid put on an event, or even had to have CPR or something a little more serious attended to. But this is one of the oldest charitable organizations in the world. It goes back 900 years, and it's been in BC for about 105 years now. And we want to talk about how an organization like this stays relevant, what's the diversification that they do to stay relevant, all the different aspects of the community services and work that they do here in Canada and here in BC and here on Vancouver Island. So we're going to learn some things that you probably never knew about with St. John Ambulance, all the wonderful work that they do. So Beyond the Band-Aid, here we go. My two special guests tonight are Ross Nichols from St. John Ambulance in Victoria and Dave Hodgins from St. John Ambulance, also in Victoria, but they're going to be speaking to things here all across the island that affect us all. So welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for coming out for the show. We really appreciate this. And thank you for all the wonderful service that you do as part of St. John Ambulance. I think it's very admirable what you're part of. So Dave, I'll start off with you. Who was St. John and how did he get an ambulance?
Thank you, Liz, and thank you for the opportunity to be here and to talk about this wonderful organization and share information and some education. And St. John Ambulance, as you said, 900 years. It goes back to the Knights and Malta, and actually there's a solid connection in our history to the fire service, and that's what I did for 35 years. I was in fire, rescue, and emergency management, and can remember many years ago taking my first St. John Ambulance course. And the passion then that comes from being a firefighter to want to serve the community, and no way better than to be involved in St. John Ambulance. So I've been doing this for over 20 years now. And mostly now what I'm involved in is a governance role. Unlike Ross, who is on the street routinely looking after people, I'm very much involved in community engagement executive in Greater Victoria, and I'm on the provincial board here in British Columbia for British Columbia and the Yukon. But when you look at the history, back in the day when they stormed the castle and there was the defense was, one part of the defense was maybe to pour some hot oil over the individuals, and fire ensued, and the Knights would have to put out the fire and provide first aid. So you can see where that connection comes from. And then it goes down through the years to 1883 when St. John Ambulance was rooted in Canada, and actually in British Columbia in 1911. And as much as a lot of the initial service was war-related, huge contingent in support of the First World War and the terrible tragedies, actually helping the individuals on the front line, but also teaching the public about what it is to deal with a gas release that would obviously seriously impact their health. So there was the public part, there was the war part, World War II, and again, a very proud history of serving and helping individuals in that. And to the point where back in the day when there was the Spanish influenza, St. John Ambulance volunteers reached out and helped the public, and that was quite something to do. And now very much involved in not only helping the public with the first aid, which is the critical component of St. John Ambulance, but we've evolved now into emergency management and working with various government agencies to help educate individuals so that they're ready should something serious happen, such as an earthquake. So that's a little bit of the history. But
right. And so St. John was one of those that was stopping the boiling oil from being poured over the wall, or?
Well, it goes back to, yes, when the Knights, and then in the system where they became, the St. John Ambulance, and then moved into the brigade, etc. Yeah.
Now, just since you're on the governance side, Dave, just want to, I don't think people know that Queen Elizabeth II is actually the head of St. John Ambulance for the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And when you see the Queen in her robes, etc., often in the formal pictures, you will see the cross, the St. John Maltese cross, and that comes from the Queen and to our Governor General, and in British Columbia to our Lieutenant Governor, all part of that formal order of St. John Ambulance. Yes.
Wonderful. What a wonderful, rich history. I mean, everything from boiling oil, bubonic plague, to now, emergency response programs that each municipality has here in the country.
Yes.
You've really evolved. And when I was doing the research, it was really interesting to learn, too, that St. John Ambulance is the trainer of choice for the Canadian Armed Forces. Now, that's a very impressive accolade to have. And it just goes to the level of diversification St. John Ambulance has done over the years to stay relevant, to stay based in what the needs of the community are, be it on a national level or on a local level. So,
and it's because we are a nonprofit organization, we survive and provide service through funding donated by the public. There's very few dollars that come from governments per se. We have certainly corporate support, but everything we do in reaching out into the community to provide service is based on having funding that's donated because we've been at an event, and I'm sure Ross will go into the detail on that. But yeah.
Very interesting. But let's talk a little bit about the funding, because as I say, we see St. John Ambulance everywhere, at every community event, large scale. I mean, at the upcoming Royal Tour that's happening here, I'm sure St. John Ambulance will be present at those large gatherings as well. So how are you funded, Ross? Where do the funds come to help do the work that you do?
They come from a number of directions. On the one side, what I'll call the commercial operations of St. John Ambulance, providing training to the public and selling first aid products. The surplus of revenue over expenditure for that comes directly over to the community to fund community services. So that might vary depending on the financial performance through the year, but it might be up to, let's say, 25 cents of every dollar might come back to community services.
Okay.
So I'll say in a blatant kind of pitch there.
Right.
Taking the training through St. John Ambulance can benefit the community. We also look for funding from corporate sponsors. We have some corporations that are very helpful in that regard. We will also approach sometimes individual donors as well as corporations if there's a particular capital requirement, for example, to help support a building improvement or the purchase of a new vehicle. And then when we do provide first aid services, medical first response services at a duty, we will suggest to the event organizer that a donation would be appropriate. And that, for a very busy division in a community, that can generate a fair bit of money. And I shouldn't forget too, some municipalities will provide a certain grant
That's good to know.
recognizing that we build the capacity of the community to respond in emergency situations.
Right.
And in fact, we have a role, a specified role with most municipalities to provide pre-hospital care at reception centers in the event of a disaster or an earthquake, for example.
Right, there's a national mandate for that,
Yes,
that SJA be part of the municipal response services that have evolved over the last 25, 30 years. That certainly wasn't something that was in place back in 1911 when St. John Ambulance was founded here in Canada. So let's talk. I know people know a little bit about some of the first aid training that is available, Ross, but what are some of the levels of training that you do provide?
To the public, the names might not mean a lot to you, but the sort of standard first aid, emergency first aid, those would be kind of 1-day, 2-day courses for people primarily at home and at play.
Right.
They would use. We then get into more of the occupational first aid. There are various levels that are required by WorkSafe BC.
So workplace safety, you're very much involved in that.
That's right.
And of course with workplace safety, there's also, each workplace has to have an emergency response plan. So that would probably be another role that St. John Ambulance would play in terms of providing emergency response training to people in various occupations.
We don't do it so much on the occupational side. We will provide advice to organizations,
Right.
More along the lines of kind of disaster response and emergency planning, emergency preparedness. But there's other types of training that specialize for example, marine first aid.
Yes.
You're out on a commercial fishing vessel out in the, however many miles off the coast. You have to be able to respond with what you have before you get back to shore. So it's quite a...
And especially here on the island. I mean, we're an island.
Yeah.
Marine first aid is key. So is that provided on a pleasure craft level as well? Or is that mostly for the commercial marine?
More for the commercial marine. There's nothing to prevent if someone has a sailboat and they like to get far offshore, probably not a bad idea to think about it, yeah.
And then there are the unique programs, the food preparation training program.
Tell us about that one, Dave.
If you're going to be dealing with serving the public food, there's a course that you need to take, and St. John Ambulance will provide that training. Babysitter program.
Yeah.
Babysitters,
And
Pet first aid.
Pet first aid.
Pet first
There's a
aid.
program to teach you how to look after your cat, dog, your budgie, your parrot.
Believe it or not, you can give CPR to your dog.
And it works.
Wow.
Yes.
Hopefully I'll never have to do that.
Right.
But yeah, that's amazing. I didn't know you did pet first aid. That's what I mean. The way you've diversified over the years, everything from the armed forces to pet first aid to marine safety to babysitting. That's why you have stayed so relevant and so progressive over the years. And when I was looking on your website, which viewers can see at the bottom of the screen here, one of the things I was surprised to find out was this pilot that you're also doing in the Lower Mainland about the non-emergency patient transfer program. Because patients or people have to wait sometimes up to 2 or 3 days just to have a transfer to an appointment or to a facility, which would otherwise tie up the time of an active ambulance. So do you know if that pilot, if the results are out yet? I think it ended in June.
We're still evaluating the pilot for results. They're not published at this point.
Right.
But I mean, you're so correct, Liz, in that BC Ambulance and their paramedics, they're very busy dealing with emergency situations.
Yes.
So if we can step up and deal with the non-emergency and provide individuals with quality care, highly trained volunteers, and some of our volunteers on their day job are paramedics, so they're getting quality care. And for us, it's an opportunity to serve the community. It's also an opportunity to survive and thrive when it comes to the funding. We need the money to be able to continue to support our volunteers.
Right.
And that's always a challenge for a nonprofit, is to have enough dollars.
Yeah.
And when you look at the system overall, and the governance guy, I'll give you some numbers around. Over 2,200 volunteers.
Here in BC?
Yes.
Wow.
Providing more than 270,000 volunteer hours.
That's over 250,000 hours
Yes.
in a year?
Volunteer.
In any given year?
Volunteer.
Wow.
And treating more than 9,000 individuals. It could be a minor bruise to something more serious. So You know, it's a really critical component of the overall service. And when you think about our governments and the service provided by our governments, you know, fire, rescue, paramedic, emergency management, there's only so much governments can do.
Absolutely.
And that's where the good people of St. John Ambulance, the volunteers, over 2,200, and we have some amazing staff. Oh,
That's
amazing staff.
Let's talk a bit about the volunteers. Like, how do you, what type of people volunteer? How do you recruit them, and how do you retain them? Because that's always a challenge with any charitable organization that's nonprofit. So what types of backgrounds does a typical volunteer have?
It's really quite remarkable how varied it is. As Dave mentioned, we have doctors, nurses, paramedics who volunteer with us. We also have people who come with a standard first aid qualification, and we will train them to become a medical first responder. We'll give them 40 hours of training, provide healthcare provider level CPR training and AED use, and provide ongoing continuing education and experience to get them up to speed.
So if I wanted to volunteer, that 40 hours of training would be provided to me free of charge?
That's correct.
Wow, that's impressive.
So we provide the training, we provide the uniform, we provide the tools that are required.
Tremendous.
And even maybe more importantly, the mentorship and the structure within to develop those skills. Because it's one thing to come out of a classroom, it's another thing to be hands-on.
Exactly,
So
exactly.
And as much as critically important as the training is for first aid to save lives, we also reach out and do training for leadership, for individuals that are volunteering. So, yeah. And last year, and the numbers I've been giving you, Liz, are all from our annual report, which is available from 2015. Over 82,000 students trained in British Columbia.
Let's talk a bit about that, because you also have a youth program.
Yes, cadet program.
So I understand at age 6 you can enter, or is that correct?
No, that's right. It sounds pretty young. There are different levels of our youth program, sort of age 6 to 10, and then 11 to 15, and then 16 to 18, and it's all, you know, tailored to the age group. For the younger ones, it's you know, it's a fun learning environment, but they start off with their first aid training, and it evolves until the end. A cadet can obtain the same level of training as the adult members.
Wow.
So it's as well as first aid, there's the individual kind of leadership, teamwork, discipline, various components to.
It sounds to me like at every level that you have the adult brigade, as you call them, and the youth brigade, and it's community building is what you're doing.
Absolutely.
There's a real quality of life that your training, that your organization provides to weave the fabric of a community. And I think at the basis of that is a real strength and a real sustainability. I think that's why you've been so successful all these years, is because those qualities of leadership, of socializing, of personal responsibility, those are all key elements that build a community, a sense of community.
Absolutely.
It goes even a step further than that with our outreach program. For example, you know, in the last year, just programs I've been involved in. I've been in elementary schools, middle schools, community centers, Girl Guide troops.
Wow.
Our
street,
place,
our place
is for homeless people that need support, need a hand on the shoulder.
Both providing medical response and teaching them first aid, which is obviously it's a whole different ballgame when you're living rough on the streets, but they want to be able to take care of themselves.
Wow. So you're working with homeless people or street people, interacting with them to, what would that interaction look like? You'd be.
Well, what we do is at a particular facility in Victoria called Our Place. That's a bit of a focal point for people that, well, both living on the street and, if I can, well, vulnerable populations in general.
Yes.
We will have a medical, sort of set up basically a medical clinic there once a week and deal with whatever issues they are having,
Wow,
whether it's in.
They thrive on the personal interaction. Somebody in uniform is there. How can I help? What do you need? And
But
Well,
as I
because
say,
they're so
also we've taught them
marginalized.
first aid in
Yeah,
classes. So.
exactly.
Yeah.
Wow, and that, you know,
One
what
of
a
those-
wonderful connection that is.
One of those individuals, a homeless person, had taken a program and just recently received the St. John Ambulance National Award for stepping in to help somebody.
Okay, we're leaping ahead, but we have to talk about this.
Yes.
because
What a
on
good
our,
news story.
chat
Can you
tonight
imagine?
Is your Local Heroes Award program.
Oh.
So I think that's a perfect segue. Do tell us, Dave, about this. I think that's remarkable.
It's another well-kept secret, and we're try as hard as we will to get the message out. If you've taken training to help somebody in an emergency situation, and it doesn't matter if it's St. John Ambulance training, if you've taken training or you have the skill to reach out, someone is having a heart attack, somebody is having a stroke, a baby is choking, somebody's fell down and they're bleeding, and you help, and we hear about that, we have a national awards program. Technically, it goes back international. It flows from the Queen. But if we don't hear from people, we don't know. So we encourage police departments, fire departments, paramedics, the Lions Club, anybody that hears of somebody that reached out and did something to help. The paperwork is very easy. It comes through the system, and we review it, and it qualifies. We just had a major event in Victoria where the Lieutenant Governor came to City Hall in Victoria and handed out several awards to police officers, firefighters, and one homeless person and others because they did something to help somebody in their time of need. And people don't do that because they are looking for an award.
No.
But at the same time, these awards are available, and we want to say thank you for stepping up and doing something, because sometimes it's challenging situations
Absolutely.
to take on and to reach out and help somebody.
Yeah.
So the recognition is there. We're proud to be able to have the Lieutenant Governor come and give somebody an award. The people and their families, of course, are always invited to participate.
Wonderful.
The Lieutenant Governor stays, she visits, she gets pictures with the people. And it goes back to what you talked about, Liz, in terms of that sense of community. And yes, we're all part of our communities. We want to reach out, we want to help. And how do we recognize volunteers and others? Well, we have these wonderful award programs, you know.
Wonderful.
And of course,
anyone can nominate and anyone can receive. It's just a question of calling the local St. John Ambulance and say, hey, I know somebody.
that's it.
And
Can they also go to your website, sja.ca? Is there links on there also to nominate people?
There is to our award program, specifically to the life-saving awards.
Oh,
yeah.
oh, yes. Okay, great.
And our staff, of course, we don't have a lot of staff. They're strategically located across the province. We have some in Vancouver, and we have 25 satellite branches, and we have staff are always there. They're almost like volunteers. Like they're so proud of what they do and how they do it. If someone walks in and said, I know John or Sally did something to help, they'll make sure that they help set them on the right road towards
Very
the
nice.
paperwork, et cetera. So, yeah, and it all comes, the head of the staff system, Karen McPherson, she works out of the Vancouver area, an amazing lady that has some fantastic staff working for her. And John Nadeau is the chair for the British Columbia Yukon Council, another volunteer that was a senior in the banking business for a lot of years and retired and still working with St. John Ambulance. So.
I hear there's a lot of passion with this program, and a lot of dedication, and a lot of heart. That's what I'm hearing around the table here. There's a lot of heart involved in this, and I think it's wonderful. Now, you touched briefly on pet first aid, which is new to me. Tell us a little bit about your pet therapy program that you also have that viewers may not know anything about.
Yeah, we have a therapy dog program. So dogs and their handlers are basically evaluated to make sure that they're good around people, and there might be some various categories there, whether it's seniors or young people. So the dogs will be taken to visit at, for example, chronic care facilities, seniors' homes, and it's remarkable how just some of these people who might be living a relatively isolated life, the joy that they get out of just being able to to pet a dog, to to give it a hug. It takes more than that. We have therapy dog handlers that are now going into schools. Kids with who have difficulty focusing on reading, for example. Just having a dog there, having their arm around the dog helps them calm them down.
To the dog?
Wow.
Well, yeah, that's right.
Wow, reading to the
or
dog.
in
And also
airports.
In airports, yeah. People are afraid to fly.
Yeah, so that started in Nova Scotia. It's starting to spread, and just once again, you'll see people with a therapy dog in the airport. So.
Wonderful. So the diversification that I mentioned at the beginning of the show, we've touched on all that. I mean, everything from emergency response to pet therapy to working with homeless people to training the Canadian Armed Forces to personal first aid, babysitting, disaster preparedness,
bicycle patrol program,
the Marine program.
Yes.
So I just want to say to our viewers that anytime that they're out at an event and see St. John Ambulance, even if you don't need any assistance, just drop by the tent, drop by and say thank you to these unsung heroes that are out there who are really adding a wonderful dimension to build our community here on Vancouver Island. And I encourage people to go onto your website, sja.ca, to learn more about your programs, how they can donate, how they can support you, or become a volunteer themselves. So I want to
mention support, Liz, and if I could just, if you asked, so what are our focus? What is our focus? Through the governance, where are our challenges, et cetera? And I think we're always struggling with funding, and we're very careful. We watch every nickel. It used to be we watched the pennies, but they took those away. But we watch every nickel and very careful with our funding. But always struggling with funding. We ask people to donate, and we're really appreciative when people stop by, recognize the volunteers for what they do, and donate. The other thing is we're always looking for volunteers.
Very good.
And it's such a learning opportunity, and it's if you're out there and you want to be part of this wonderful family, we're always looking for volunteers, and you can volunteer in so many ways.
Very good.
It's not just about stopping the bleeding.
You've certainly expressed that so well tonight, gentlemen. I want to thank you so much for going beyond the Band-Aid with me and finding out a lot more about what your wonderful program does. So Dave Nichols, thank you. Ross Nichols, thank you. I need a little first aid on that name recognition. And Dave Hodgins, thank you very much. And on behalf of all the crew here at Head On, I want to thank you for joining us. Next week, Brian Anderson will be here in the host seat, and he's going to be talking about the Nanaimo Area Land Trust and the Wildwood Forest issue. So thanks again to our guests and to our crew here at Shaw, and we'll see you again next time on Head On.